So, I'm going to assemble the undercarriage of the continuous armchair. So, I'm going to measure for the angles now. And a lot of different ways of measuring for the angles. I'm going to get the legs here and stick them back in there. Oh, I got this thing line here because a lot of people want to know where I always use this protractor right here to measure the angles with, and they don't make them anymore. I can't find them anywhere, large 12-inch protractors. But a student this year located this chalkboard protractor, and I had to cut the ends off to get it to fit, but it works. So if you're looking for one of these, look up chalkboard protractor on the internet. Now maybe you'll find it. They're like $3.50. So how do they do that? Okay. Let's see. Down forward and oh, got 1 and 2 on the ground. Got to put the legs in their spots and twist them in good and tight. And so of course stretcher goes in up here, but the rubber band fits real good right there. And that's just as accurate to measure from. Okay, let me get a aluminum angle here. So turn it this way so you can see it. What we're going to be doing is measuring that and that. So this angle that's right there. Now, you can eyeball the center of the leg right like that, or you can take this piece of aluminum that's been oxidized and put a black mark on it right there, and you could even put one right down there, although that center is real easy to see. Okay, so got a front leg here, and that is 75. I write it right on the leg so I don't lose it. I'll have to be looking at a sheet of paper. 72 for the rear leg. And see what we got over here. $75. And 72. So both rear legs are 72, both front legs are 75. Every time I make a continuous arm, that's it, at least within a half a degree. So obviously, I could just go ahead and not even measure for these angles and just drill those, which I probably should do, because then I'd eliminate this part right here, but then I wouldn't get to do this part right here. Okay, now I need to measure for the center stretcher angle. So center stretcher will be, right like that, and got side stretchers right there. So it's this angle that's right there. Okay. So I need, there's the right stretcher, and there is the left stretcher. I'll do the right stretcher first. And now what I do is I measure the confluence of the rubber bands there. I measure that angle, and then I measure the supplement of this angle, which is actually over here. But I can measure it right here. So in other words, I measure, it will be the acute that I'll be measuring. And so like right here, I've got 84. And right here I've got 84. So if you average those, so if you average 84 and 84, let's see, where's my piece of paper? Be 84. So I'm going to write that right on my stretcher, 84. Now this is going to go into leg number 4, so I'm going to mark that right on the stretcher. This side's going to go into leg number 1. I got that marked. I've also got those numbers pointing to the bottom of the leg, towards the foot, so I always know the orientation of this. Now I need to know where I'm going to bore this hole, and I'm going to come into the side of the stretcher, but because I like for the growth rings to be of the tenon to be perpendicular to the long wood fibers of the mortise, and the leg has a splay to it, a tilt to it, then this has to be slightly rotated out in order for those growth rings to be dead perpendicular. So it's kind of hard to show, but you can figure it out. So I find the center, I rotate it out a little bit. Now I put an arrow towards me because I put an arrow towards the acute angle. So that's the way that's going to be drilled, right like that. And I have to know that when I get over there to drill. So let's do this again for the left stretcher. 84. 84. So what do you know? Okay. Locate my hole, put my arrow for the acute angle, right 84. Leg number 3 and leg number 2. Alright, now I got all my angles. Set these stretchers to the side. And now I'm going to go ahead and mark the wedge position and saw kerfs for the wedges. Some places I like to split the tenon and drive the wedge in, and other places I like to saw the kerf. In the legs I like to saw the kerf. And so the kerf for the wedge is always going to be perpendicular to the long wood fibers of the mortise piece. So these kerfs are going to be dead straight across, right like that. So now I could wait and put the undercarriage together and saw the kerfs, not glue it to the seat, but just put it together and put a dry run in the seat. But then I'd have to saw it by hand with the hand saw. And if you're not painting your chair, then you might want to do that to make sure those wedges are perfect. Because doing it right like this, once I get the undercarriage together, these legs could come out not quite in the position that they are right now. And so the wedge might be slightly off a little bit. Not enough, you know, technically to hurt anything, but visually it would. So now I can saw these on the bandsaw. Okay. I got one of the side stretchers here, and the other day I turned it rough to where it's, you know, 11/16 right out here, and what we're looking for is 5/8. But 5/8 can mean a lot of things. You know, your drill bit, 5/8 drill bit can measure quite a bit different depending on if you're using an auger bit or a brad point. Even brad points will measure different just among themselves. I've seen brad points from the same manufacturer measure different. So you have to size your tenon to the drill bit that you're using. So I have left this large, dried it. Now I can turn it to the size of the drill bit that I'm going to use. Now, there's a few ways of doing that. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do it on the lathe, and I'm going to use this turning caliper right here. I don't know what this thing's called, turning caliper, I think. And this is a 3/8 parting tool, sometimes called a Buchanan, I believe. And I've had it for a really long time. You can tell I'm about run out of room sharpening the thing. So this is the way I've got it set to match the drill bit that I'm going to use, and I'll cut the tenon with that. But I've done it other ways too in the past. So one really good way of doing it, and a low-tech way, is taking a wrench and filing the wrench. I like to toe it in right like that to where it slips over it, to where it matches your drill bit. So now the drill bit and this wrench are a pair. You just hold it over it, take the parting tool in, and it just slips over it, and it's an excellent way to do it. Now, another way that I've done it is with a plate, right like this, and this is a really low-tech way. No lathe needed, and there's a lot of advantages to this way. So what I would do is just score a line where I want the tenon to end. Score it. I could drill a hole and stick it down in there, a hole that's larger than this, and put a chisel up next to it and turn it around and score that line, and then drive it down through the plate. And the plate only cuts on the top side, so I've filed it to where the bottom side is not cutting, and so it doesn't cut when you pull it back out. So it only cuts when you drive it down. And I've got a lot of different sizes of holes there. They're on either side of 5/8 to match different bits, and then I could even tweak that a little bit with a file to match it perfectly. It's a great way to do it if you don't have a lathe and you're whittling your tenons. Whittling your draw knife and your stretchers, and instead of just whittling the tenons, you get it close and then drive it through the drive plate. So, okay, so now we're going to go over to the lathe. Now I'm going to cut a 1-inch tenon. Now, if you remember, whenever I was measuring for it, I added 1 1/8 inches. What I'm going to do is, the raw tenon's only going to be 1 inch, but the tenon's going to go in 1 1/8 inches, and that's just to hide any bit of its rawness. So I take out the shoulder, and so what would be the shoulder gets inserted into the mortise, because the leg is at an angle, and if I cut 1 1/8 inches tenon, you would see a little raw triangle of tenon, and it's fine, but I decided I didn't like that, so I wanted it to look like it grew out of the leg. So that's what I do. So I'll be cutting 1 inch on here. So let's go to lathe and cut this thing. Go, got the tenons cut, took the shoulder out with the skew chisel. We're ready to go. Well, I just want to show you how what the fit is that I'm looking for on these. So I've got a test hole right here. This is the one that I just turned, and I can push it in by twisting like that, and when it comes out you'll hear a pop.
Okay.
So now I've got to make wedges, and I've got to set up for the boring and all that. And now today it's pretty dry. It's bright, sunshiny. I've actually built a fire this morning, so it's pretty low humidity in the shop. And these things the tenons aren't swelling up too fast. On a day where it's rainy, especially a summer day, I don't leave them out hardly at all. But even today, I mean, I got to set them somewhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and just set them back in the kiln. And whenever I'm ready to start boring the holes and putting it together, I'll pull them back out again. So that's what I'm going to do. And then when I come back, we'll make wedges. So I'm going to cut some wedges here. Now, I used to cut wedges the way I'm going to show you. For years I did, before I had a bandsaw. And then when I got a bandsaw, I started sawing them with the bandsaw. Now, I switched back to this way, and there's two reasons why. One of them, to cut them on a bandsaw, I need to cut them out of boards. And I don't have any boards. I'm always looking for something that came off of a board. But I do have all of these maple cutoffs from turnings. So, might as well make them out of that. Plus, the second reason is I like the process. It's just a nice pace. So first thing I'll do is figure out how I'm going to. I always get this wrong on these. Yeah, right like that. So I always got to figure out which way I'm supposed to split the block. Go. Now my wedges are about 11/16, so I'll just lay out a 3/4 inch. You got to get some good pencils around here. Use that 3/4 inch chisel, and now I can just. Well, like I said, I always do it wrong every time. No matter if I'm thinking or not, I get it backwards. I got that one backwards. That's okay. We can make it work. Okay. Because I like to cut them in the radial plane. They're a little bit easier. So now I just, there goes one if I can find it. I just split those out all day. Then just set them up. Show you what this little thing looks like. It's real complicated. And take the largest chisel you got. There we go. And well, we got some nice wedges there. So bring the camera around and show you a close-up on that.